It's the 28th of April, 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. Is the cosmic sun the same as the source central sun? The answer may surprise you. And the deep state thought they had an ace in the hole this weekend. Based on past alignments, they were expecting a windfall by today. Why didn't it work? At the same time, the International Monetary Fund states the global economic order is undergoing a major reset. And in regular news today, major blackouts across Portugal, Spain, and Germany. Also, nearly every cell phone and Bluetooth accessory was hacked worldwide. None of this was an accident. Who was responsible? Well, we've made it to nearly the end of April here. Probably have one more report before the end of April. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that attended this weekend. It was a lot of fun. At least I had a good time talking to all of you. And we'll be doing it again in a couple of more weeks. So kind of excited about that. We did it close to the end of the month, at least the live. So this month. Anyway, busy month and busy weekend. And believe it or not, there's a lot of news that and a lot of things that took place between Saturday and today. So onward and upward. Okay, let's start with some regular news. So most recently, Trump proposes to sign a bill to prevent Congress from trading in the stock markets. Well, first of all, number one, we have something called the Stock Act, or the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act. So it doesn't actually prevent Congress members from trading, but it prevents them from profiting on inside knowledge they may gain as members of Congress. Pretty fine line. Number two, that's very funny to me because it hasn't been that long since they needed Congress to manipulate the markets and tank the markets after the tariffs. Remember, he's told everybody he was going to announce the tariffs and told Congress to do some trading ahead of time. Also told a lot of stock market insiders, friends, and donors of the Trump organization so that they could profit from the downslide on the market. So very interesting that would happen. So speaking of inside information, there was a couple of interviews or a couple of times recently where Trump was asked if he had spoken to President Xi about the tariffs, if there's any kind of negotiations going on. And he said that he would rather decline to comment. However, most recently, and also most recently scrubbed from the entire internet, are pictures of Chinese Treasury officials leaving the U.S. Treasury in Washington, D.C. I think we've got a picture of that. We managed to find something anyway. So these officials, the information from behind the scenes is, first of all, this has been confirmed by those that work in the Treasury Department, that there was negotiations going on between Treasury officials from both countries. Now, for those of you that don't know or don't recall, the Chinese Treasury and the American Treasury and the Treasury of every other country in the world are one global unit. There has been some discussions going on, not about tariffs, so to speak, because everybody knows what's going on behind the scenes with that, and they don't really care how many businesses they tank. And for that matter, most of the big businesses in China have facilities here in the States, and they can just sell here locally. But as for negotiations going on behind the scenes, it was more about money that is due to come out today. There was a lot of talk about what they can look forward to, their cut, how much money is going to China, and of course there was supposed to be plenty going to China. South Korea is also waiting for money. We have confirmed that 100%. There are also other countries that were waiting for a big payout today, many in the Middle East, Eastern Europe. There was also a lot of talk this weekend about this wonderful money that the Trump organization is going to be handing out like Oprah Winfrey with, you get a whatever, make makeup. You get this. You get a prize. Look under your chair, and so everybody was talking about this at the funeral behind the scenes. Now, speaking of the Pope's funeral, we all know that that happened this weekend. Pretty much went off as standard, no major fanfare, at least as it relates to mainstream media, with the exception of a leaked video of Trump apparently arguing with Melania. I think we've got a short clip of that here for you. Uh, yeah, at this time, there was a prayer going on, and apparently people really don't care. You see people, not only
Für alle
Trump, they're talking,
verstorbenen
but there's also
Gläubigen,
people,
dass
uh,
sie in das
other
Himmelreich
delegates,
eintreten
so to
dürfen.
speak, speaking as well, like it's a party at the funeral. So, not to say that, we're all big fans of the Vatican around here, including myself. However, there's a certain amount of responsibilities and, for lack of a better term, class that we all exhibit, even if we're at a funeral for someone that we don't particularly care for. And apparently that doesn't apply to this current administration. He did not wear a black suit like everybody else did. He wore a blue suit, and apparently was having some kind of an argument with Melania, probably over the fact that that's not her real husband and she's not his real wife. That could be that could be something you would argue about. Uh, Most of the time, these public appearances now are all about obligations and promised money, payoffs, that kind of thing. The Trump family, that goes for the kids as well. So this is, atypical Duck Dynasty people uh, trying to have some class at a world event. As for behind the scenes there at the funeral, there were a lot of talks going on. Of course, the media plays it off like everybody wants to talk to Trump, everybody wants to talk to Trump. Nobody could care less about orange people or otherwise. What they want to talk about is the big payouts that they've been promising them over and over and over again. You see, Duck Dynasty Trump operatives have been promising money to everyone, everywhere. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. They've also been creating quite a mess everywhere as well. Uh, for those of you that don't know, or just to repeat, the Duck Dynasty operatives are all SSP or Secret Space Program operatives. They hail from an organization called the ACIO, which is a global organization. There are not a whole lot of the operatives that are still wanting to play the game with them after failure after failure after failure, to the point where they have called in some of what we call the old guard. I call them the curmudgeons of the group. Now, you can look up what that means in English if you don't know. But the curmudgeons of the group, a couple of weeks ago, decided that they were going to help and with all their knowledge, and that they could do a better job than everybody else. And they decided to try to take charge over what they call the younger folks, which are under the age of 60, and tried to give it a go. Obviously, that didn't quite work out, but there was a lot of interesting things that have taken place. I'm pretty sure that the information to do this did not come from that, but probably came from some old knowledge of things that Marduk et al. May have left behind. So we talked quite a bit on the weekend about the smiley face alignment. And the smiley face alignment, was also tied to the alignment of a number of other things, which, let's just say, maybe worked a little bit at half mast this weekend before they were discovered. And their hope was to gain some control over Earth's computer systems. That was their hope. And of course, for them, every single thing they find is always tied to money and financial control. That's all they care about is financial control. Also, they would like to have some aliens come to Earth and help them out a little bit. You know, they're kind of struggling on their own. They missed the mark earlier this weekend or on the 25th, which was supposed to get them some help, at least so they thought. That help did not come. However, those that came before them, meaning folks that are not, let's just say, human, did have some things that were supposed to be triggered along, well, let's just say during the new moon that followed the smiley face, which occurred yesterday. And, well, let's just say it's been a torturous last 24 hours until we managed to clean up the mess. As for them, they managed to get their hands on some kind of limited access to this for a short period of time. It probably started around late afternoon yesterday, my time, and continued on all night long. And I know that because I've been up all night long cleaning up the mess. They don't really know what this stuff does. And of course, for them, they think it's, oh, money's going to come out. If we push all these buttons, money is going to come out. And wow, look at the amazing things we could possibly do with this. Well, money didn't come out immediately, so they started playing around and pushing a bunch of buttons on some space junk they knew nothing about. But today they're going to learn about that, and I'm going to tell you about it as well. This pushing of erratic buttons also resulted in a major power outage across all of Europe. Uh, and, well, not all of Europe, I guess you could say Portugal, Spain, parts of Germany. Most of that has been recovered at this moment, as far as I know. There might be a few small areas still yet to regain power. But all of these outages were due to a bunch of Duck Dynasty people trying to operate some equipment they know nothing, absolutely nothing about. Now, they figured out when they made the little boo-boo and happened to knock out power in several countries that they could do a lot more of hacking. Now, because these people are very haphazard, very immature, and probably smoking something that you and I probably don't smoke, uh, you know, uh, I wouldn't even, I don't even know if you smoke. I don't know how you get that kind of a drug. But they thought the next greatest hack that they could possibly do was to hack into all of the cell phone networks as well as the Bluetooth networks worldwide. They thought that they would play some games and look at people's cameras and see what people were doing with their cell phones, near their cell phones. And this probably got their rocks off because they didn't seem to do much else. Probably they had planned on hooking it up to some kind of a frequency network and maybe blowing some people's minds. You know, they joked around about, we're men in black and we're going to wipe your memory and all of this kind of stuff and just really mess around with humans. You know, that's pretty much what they were talking about behind the scenes. They also wanted to hack into people's headphones, most specifically the Apple AirPods and other Bluetooth devices so that they could send subliminal messages through your Bluetooth over the last 24 hours. So they've had some fun for a short period of time today, probably a total of less than 6 to 8 hours before we were able to completely dismantle the system and their access. But this system could have done a lot more harm than that. So let's talk about a few things as to what this system was, what it was actually meant to do, how it kind of worked a little bit autonomously for a long time. And this particular access was not actually something that they got themselves. You see, the bloodlines attached to the folks, the fallen ones that they were expecting to show up this weekend, might have left a little bit of something that came on in the last 24, 48 hours so that they could get the help of their bloodlines to fight the rest of the humans on Earth while they were fighting each other for world domination, I guess. And that's what was triggered in the last 24 hours. Now, minimal access for them means a lot to us as humans. So therefore, getting all of these alarms going off at, very early this morning, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock this morning wasn't necessarily entirely due to them. It was more to do with universal structures having issues based on what everybody else left. Yes, they managed to cause some disturbances because there were some other things we were more concerned with. So, in order to really explain to you what this actually does, first we have to talk about something called the cosmic central sun. Now, if you have been around in the alternative media for a while, not just the whistleblower section, you probably have heard about something called the cosmic central sun. Now, we automatically think when it's talked about, whether it be in the Ascension glossary or in other circles, that there is one cosmic central sun. Matter of fact, the deep state thought there was one cosmic central sun. They also felt that there may have been a cosmic central moon, which there was not. However, the universal networks or omniversal networks are actually tied to our sun and our moon, but also to every other planet within our galaxy. Now, cosmic central suns are artificial. They have nothing to do with source. If anything, there were structures in place in and around source that would mirror the point of creation and reverse it in many places throughout the multiverse. Cosmic central suns are not tied to other star systems per se. They are, but they are not located within other star systems. And they are set up to be artificial alignments with, let's call it, anti-source. So a network based on false dark, false light, false neutral, technical sources of creation. These central suns were not stagnant, meaning they did not stay in one place. They are kind of like your personal assemblage points when it comes to the dark and the light. You have a natural assemblage point, and the way black magic on this planet used to work is that they used to play with artificial assemblage points, which were tied to false light and false dark, as did universal points move around. So we did have, as human beings, we did have some connection to these central suns as well, which allowed for certain alignments, whether it be in your birth sign and a zodiac sign, or a constellation, or other parts of the omniverse that were connected to artificial intelligence systems that were meant to manipulate Earth and therefore you. Remember, we were also collateral for these people, and we powered a lot of AI systems throughout the ages that were not set up by humans. So the alignment that it appears that they have been looking for is an alignment with a cosmic central sun, the particular one that occurs regularly. These alignments occur regularly, so this is not really a new thing. But in this particular case, because of the war that everybody was expecting to continue on Earth recently, which would have been on Friday, there was a whole lot of mechanisms that were set in motion that normally do not occur when one of these central suns aligns with our sun, our moon, or the earth. And in numbers, you could say that there are an infinite number of central suns created for multiple purposes that our deep state here knows nothing about, and that is obvious. Now, you've probably heard some stories. If you haven't, there's some talk on the internet about the fact that the Last Supper, uh, with the person being, as Jesus and some apostles, uh, there were some stones. So if you look it up on the internet, they call it, I think it's moldite. It's a green crystal looking stone. They claim that he brought that to the Last Supper, and that stone was supposed to be Lucifer's stone. This is the story they tell on the internet about these stones. But in fact, it is not a known mineral to us, or crystal, or quartz, or anything like that that we know here on Earth. Uh, there are multiple stones that are special. They do not come from Lucifer, although many different groups of people, non-people, I should say, because really people weren't involved in this, deep state or otherwise, who have tried to control these stones, and with good reason. So in total, there are 13 of these stones that existed within planet Earth. They were not carried around to different locations, ever. And originally, these stones were what Source refers to as his crown of glory. And these stones originally, and still are, at least all the original ones, are located around the core of Earth. So they are not reachable technically by humans, secret space program folks. They could not move them. Matter of fact, because of their protection, they were not accessible by anyone. So all they could really do, much like other types of stones of this nature, all they could really do was change the energy within the stones, which did happen. And it happened by 3 separate groups, actually, over a period of time. So we'll talk about that in a sec. So let's continue talking about the stones and what they did. Originally, on the creation of Earth, these stones, all 13 stones, were filled with Source's golden life force. These particular stones became anchors for Source. Not only that, they were surrounding what we call the point of creation, which was created within Earth. They served as a protection for the soul of Earth, so to speak, and they were also conductors of life force to not only permeate throughout Earth, but also they were connected to Source itself. They also would reflect on the kingdom coins that we talked about this weekend and continue to write the language of Source, or the DNA blueprint, as you call it. DNA, RNA, GNA, and other types of blueprints for the entire multiverse, as Earth was a keystone planet. Somewhere along the way, as Earth was tortured, meaning we had many wars here, the first person to create various overlays on these stones was Anu. You may have remembered me talking about Anu for a long time. Anu was Marduk's grandfather, so to speak, if we were to look at them the same way we look at people in generations. Anu was a being that came here and during one of the many wars we had with the Draco, and quote unquote conquered Earth and humanity. He was the first one to take the life force out of the stones and replace it with colored life force, which went to then on to create the first part of infinite central suns around the multiverse. So it was a way to use Earth once again in order to create various other, let's say, artificial intelligence, cosmic central suns around the multiverse. He wasn't the only one, though. Later on in history, we also had Marduk, Enki, and Enlil do the same. In this particular case, they couldn't make the full adjustment to the crown of glory stones, so to speak. So what they did, where Anu went on the inside and was pushing out other types of energy into these stones, Marduk, Enki, and Enlil decided to conquer Anu's conquering. I know these people love to conquer the conquering of the conquer, and surround those central suns so that they couldn't do anything without their permission. Isn't that funny? And then other systems were created throughout the omniverse, universe, Earth, and otherwise connected to these varying central suns. There were other people that had access to these omniversal and universal systems, such as Artemis. Over the years, of course, Lucifer had some partnership agreements with both, and then created third layers of central suns within central suns. That's a lot of conquering of conquering conquerors conquering. They like that, apparently, on their side of things. And nobody trusts anybody on their side either. So they must create all of these points, so to speak, so that they can't operate without the other. Who trusts the demon? Maybe the deep state does, because they were certainly on that like white on rice this last night anyway. So so these networks, because these central suns are what we would call fluid, planets are constantly moving, galaxies are constantly moving, nebulas are constantly moving, the universe is constantly in motion, and nothing is stagnant. On occasion, some of these central suns would align with our moon, our sun, and our earth, and then trigger certain networks to work, and then trigger those stones from the outside in. Because the energy in there was corrupted and meant to match by color, so we had black, white, gray or silver, purple, blue, red, orange, yellow, green, brown or amber, and we also had black gold, neutral gold, and false light gold as well. So that made up your 13 stones. So at different times, different alignments, different times of year, even on Earth, these stones would align with one of these cosmic central suns and create, well, havoc here on Earth, or allowed them to utilize the creative powers of the crown of glory to do certain things. One of those times was last night. And this was more to do with the ending of an alignment with Pluto, Mars, and Earth. So Mars, we know as the red planet, and Mars was more aligned with the red stone. And what we saw happening was an attempt to access the causal density or causal plane of the universe. Now, when we're talking colors, as always, we're talking about spaces in between existence. There was a complete and total failure to access those planes of existence. Now, Interesting thing that the deep state doesn't understand about these crystals, but something that Marduk, Enki, Enlil, and Anu and Lucifer knew very, very well was that these crystals were what you call living crystals. So we often sometimes, as humans, we use crystals and various stones for a lot of different reasons. We know that they can clean energy. Uh, we know that they can hold energy. And each crystal has a different frequency and vibration to it, and they're not all the same. So we use them for different purposes when we do healings and things like that. These particular stones, however, are what we call living stones, which hold what we call living water or the life force of source. Now, even though they manage to change the essence and maybe some energy based on the Amenti agreements and Emerald Order covenants and all of these lovely things that happened about 250,000 years ago. And there was still some tinkering that happened even earlier, more than 3 million years ago, to these stones. Still, because they were a part of Source's creation, they never lost its soul. So, this as one object, just like every other living being throughout the multiverse, it has a soul. These were organically made. So because they cannot interfere and have never figured out how to tinker, let's say, with a soul, they were unable to infect the soul of these crystals as well. This is an important thing to understand because when the attempt happened last night, due to an alignment with the cosmic sun and the ridiculous humans that walk this planet we call the deep state, that have no understanding of what they're tinkering with, and somehow getting some limited access to this, rather excitedly so, so to speak, they, let's just say there was some immediate damage control that had to be done. Now, much like I have talked to you about accessing source through the soul, because it's one communication that they can't interfere with, that connection being reestablished kind of wiped out that possibility of them being able to use these stones in any other way like their non-human predecessors did within a short period of time. So havoc, yes, today, not as bad as it could have been if we hadn't done damage control all night long last night. Because, of course, these people have no idea what they're doing. Now, the false light gold and false black gold version of these stones, and then, of course, we had a neutral, were predominantly maintained. They were originally all gold. You could say that the first switch over to create cosmic central sun were maintained by an artificial intelligence because Anu's not here anymore. Hasn't been for a number of years, but uh, they were converted to an artificial gold or made of artificial life force, for lack of a better term, connected to these central suns, which as humans we've had the privilege of powering. What else? What else did we power? See, when we get all our power back, we're going to be pretty powerful beings here on Earth. And let's hope that we don't have any deep state people. Well, it'll burn them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, by that point, we also were responsible for powering these central suns in a lot of ways too. Uh, Not only that, they had other planets and suns and stars that were organically made pretty well bound to these central suns also, using all of creation to power them. But the three of them that were let's just say the most powerful, and this is why the deep state and other black magic workers focus on times of year that were still connected to these stones. So the false light one was connected to the summer solstice. The false dark one was connected to the winter solstice, and the neutral one was connected to our two equinoxes that occur each year. These particular stones at that point in time would allow for them to connect to a few locations on Earth, uh, mainly tied to these stones. Those locations were Mount Olympus, also another mountain that lies, I can't pronounce, so I'm not even going to try, but it is one of the tallest mountains in Mongolia, and it lies right on the border between Mongolia and China, and also another mountain in Ireland. So between these three, they were connected to the three main stones, and then that would set off an entire worldwide grid, web, network, and net, not only within your human and throughout Earth, which would, of course, affect Earth's computer systems, which is why these people think that every time there's a solstice or an alignment, these things are going to make them tons of money because that's all they can think about is money, power, and control. And Duck Dynasty is a little slow on the uptake, if you know what I mean. So they still wait for this, even though these things haven't happened in a long time, because it would still require Marduk, Enki, Enlil. Remember, Marduk never did anything he couldn't control, with their overlay on all central suns and on the Earth core and the crown of glory was what we call them, the glory stones. So there would be definitely another button that Marduk would have to push to have given them full access for sure. Now, even if they got those keys, it would still require another access from Marduk, Enki, and Enlil, and of course Anu, and everybody would have to turn the key at the same time. Do they have all those keys? No, they do not. So very little access, but enough to cause some destruction, which they laughed at about and laughed about in the worst way. And it was just like a bunch of hooligans spray painting the side of a building. That's exactly what they reminded me of is, a bunch of people that saw this brand new building go up and then they, wake up in the middle of the night and start spray painting it and laughing. That's how ridiculous they looked to me last night and this morning and today. Uh, I was waiting for them to spray paint smiley faces everywhere and say, oh, look, smiley face gave us something, but it had nothing to do with that at all. Now, the rest of the stones were all different colors, and each one was tied to 4 other locations on Earth. I'm going to leave it at that. 12 in total. None of them were the Arctic or Antarctica, surprise enough. But all these idiots thought is that there are 13 cities. Now, I can tell you from personal experience, none of these locations were located in any kind of a city whatsoever. Most of them were deep inside mountains, Mount Everest, K2, Mount Kilimanjaro, and those types of places, but I'm not going to name them all because I'm pretty sure everything has gone out of there and we don't need these people running around like mountain climbers yodeling, smiley face, painting, I don't know, people. So now, connected to these 12 other locations, which were connected to various colored stones, we of course had worldwide grids, nets, networks, and other things that would light up when there was an alignment with one of these stones. Now, they had a partial key that they must have gotten from some depth of hell, uh, or one of their bloodline things. I don't know. But they managed to get like a quarter of the way there last night. It's pretty much all they got. Damage control was done on the rest. The soul of the stone was taken over and then kind of shut them down by midday today anyway. Now, I know they thought this would have given them some access into perpetuity. So there's another part of this where there's a little bit of a caveat here. Things in this particular case run in 12s. It's 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, and then of course there's always a 13th key. The colored stones have power and are only powering grids for a period of time of around 12 hours. That's about as long as they could hold it or hold a charge to a stone. So the colored stones didn't last very long, so they were about 9 hours into it when we shut it all down completely this morning, or shut them out, or this afternoon. And then as far as the golden or false gold stones, they would last for a period of about 12 days. So the charges on these stones don't last long. Marduk, Enki, and Enlil knew that. Anu knew that. Everybody else knew that had some kind of access to these grids during these times. However, these people don't know that. Therefore, they're yelling, we're back, we got access, we got everything. And that definitely was not the case. And it would have been limited even if we did nothing, and they only had partial access to the networks that were tied here on Earth to these stones regardless. But, everything that they do here ripples out everywhere very quickly. Now, the real power behind something like this affects everywhere, near everywhere where there was any kind of a cosmic central sun. Therefore, we had a lot of people, non-people people, very, very upset, and were running around cleaning up messes that were going on, universally speaking, due to these alignments. Well, these guys are going, hey, we're going to hack a cell phone, Oh, look, we hit the power grid. Whoopsie. It's ridiculous people. Anyway, onward through the fog here. They are expecting another alignment with another colored stone, which is green this time. They are expecting this alignment to align with something in the Himalayas and something else in the Orion constellation. I think it's the nebula or somewhere, some Stargate they talk about there. And they think that this is going to occur on May 12th on the full moon. Oh boy, shock, shock. And that when it occurs, then aliens are going to come from Orion in the lower astral and have a big meeting and tell them all the wonderful things they're going to be able to achieve in the next 100 years. Well, number one, that's not your stone. Number two, we do not have cosmic central suns anymore, with a lot of help from our friends in the last several hours. So good luck. I hope you all have a good time in the Wesak Valley of the Himalayas waiting for someone to show up. Good luck waiting for another alignment, and good luck finding another key that actually functions as far as the deep state is concerned. So on that note, now you know the reason for the power outages. Everybody kept asking. They said it was due to some atmospheric anomaly that took place. I think that was the official public statement about that. However, this was a little bit more than an atmospheric anomaly, I can tell you, as far as the cleanup was concerned. And unless one of those idiots that were laughing like a bunch of teenagers, spray painting a building, unless their name is astronomical or atmospheric anomaly, I probably would say no, it wasn't due to that. But it showed us something else that needed to go away. Everybody, let's just say everybody, except for the Duck Dynasty people, were a great help in dismantling the system to make sure that nothing like this happens again. And they definitely do not want a bunch of what they consider non-repairable humans playing with a bunch of space junk they know nothing about, and then affecting everything in the universe. Of course, well, that would be really bad. So on that note, that's pretty much the synopsis of everything that I know about that happened over the weekend that I can actually report. And I will see you on Wednesday.